I'm Tammy Dunnett, ex-target, a workplace bully turned communication coach. But it wasn't that long ago when I lacked the skills, the tools, and the knowledge to ditch the drama, confidently handle difficult conversations, and create better relationships. Fast forward past many failed attempts and lessons learned, and you will see the business that I have today. One that is helping others just like you to find the confidence and peace knowing you can change your circumstances one conversation at a time. I created the Dissolve Workplace Conflict Summit to give you access to industry leaders who are sharing simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies so you can do the same. If you are an employee, supervisor, or an employer and you are looking to access the top strategies to successfully dissolve conflict without damaging your relationships, then you, my friend, are in the right place. I'd like to welcome you to Rob Pennington. He is an award-winning trainer, speaker, and author, and has been improving the performance of leaders and teams since 1975. His multi-day program, Successful Work Relationships, has received the highest evaluations at ExxonMobil every year for 34 years. Mental Health America awarded him their Outstanding Speaker Award 4 times, and Meeting Professionals International recognized him as one of their original platinum presenters. His autobiographical self-help book, Find the Upside of the Downtimes, How to Turn Your Worst Experiences into Your Best Opportunities, has won 6 awards. As a board member in numerous professional associations over many decades, he received the Pennington Award for Excellence in recognition of extraordinary and selfless service, given annually in his honor by the Houston chapter of the National Speaker Associations to their Member of the Year. And today we're going to be talking about 3 keys to relationship success. Welcome, Rob.
I'm so glad to be here, Tammy. Thank you so much. And really, congratulations on your introduction for yourself, because that was so well done. It really reflects the effort, the challenges that you've overcome in your own life to be able to share some things that have made a difference in your life. So it's very impressive.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in this space, that is their journey. They didn't intend to be on this journey. This wasn't where they saw themselves in the future, but fate unveils its red carpet, and here I am.
The way I think about it is everyone's personality is divided into 2 things, basically. The lessons you've learned and the lessons you haven't learned. Very simple. And all your stress is about an unlearned lesson. If you knew how to handle it, it wouldn't be stressful.
That's right. That's great. That's actually really good. I mean, that's like clear cut. All right, we're done.
But that requires you to believe you have something to do with your stress.
Oh, my goodness. We have so much to cover, I'm sure. So this is obviously about dissolving conflict and helping to create better relationships. And I'm really happy that you're here to talk to us about your perspective of how to manage conflict. And you have a really unique take on it in terms of the questions you ask and when you ask them. So maybe share.
I want to put it in a big perspective, because the goal is not no conflict. That's not possible. But I think 50 to 90% less conflict is very possible and very doable. But you got to do a couple things first. The first thing is you got to realize it's not personal. And I think this is easy. It is, but just think about it. Get someone in mind who's just kind of like difficult for you to deal with. Everybody got somebody in mind. Okay. Now, aren't they going to be the way they are whether you're there or not?
Oh, that's a truth bomb. I don't know.
Yeah, of course they are. Of course they're going to be that way. That's the way they are. So it's not personal. They're going to be that way whether you're there or not. Now, I'll grant you it's difficult, but it's not personal. But the problem is anything that is uncomfortable, we go, whoa, there's something wrong. If I'm uncomfortable, there's something wrong. If someone does something I'm uncomfortable, then what they did is wrong. And we don't just judge their behavior, we judge their motive. Why are they doing that thing that's wrong? Well, they don't care, they don't appreciate, they don't value. And then that's when we take it personally. They don't value me. And then we're authorized to react. And the fascinating thing is our reaction is guaranteed to make them feel comfortable or uncomfortable. Comfortable, which triggers them making the same decisions, and now we're in our corners. So you can avoid that whole initial being triggered by just realizing it's not personal. They're behaving the way they think is best. Now, how do I learn to behave so that I'm not stressed by this? and so that's the first thing, is just having that awareness that it's not personal. And when you realize that, then you can, like anything that we're challenged by, you can come up with a plan for how you're going to address it better next time. And so, I believe there's this emotional wave that hits us in the middle of a conflict that causes us to forget any communication skill. So learning how to deal with stress is an important part of being better at resolving conflicts. They're right here together. So we're going to give some information about both of those. So that's the first thing, is realizing it's not personal. It's difficult.
I love it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought there was a natural pause.
Anytime. I'm better when I'm interrupted. So the second.
I just wanted to show you. I wrote a little diagram already. Does it show up there?
Yes, it does. That's great.
Will they be the same whether you're there or not? Yes or no? I mean, it really kind of puts things into perspective. That's why I was like, oh my gosh.
Right. And another one is, are you stressed or not? If you are, then there's an unlearned lesson. What's the unlearned lesson?
Oh.
And this is based on the assumption, again, that you have something to do with how you're feeling. That you have something to do with how you're thinking. Because if you give a responsibility away to somebody, well, then you got to go get them to be the way you want them to be so you can feel how you want to feel. What's the chances of getting that to happen?
Exactly.
Like zero.
And then you're sitting there watching the seasons change. You might as well just be watching the seasons.
Exactly. But you get to be right. You get to be right. There was a woman named Betty Rogers. She was buried in Coral Gables, Florida. I've seen the tombstone. She said, on her tombstone, she said, "See, I told you I was right." It gives new insight to the phrase being dead right. So, So let me ask you a series of questions, because I think there's no correct answer necessarily, but I think it'll get some insight about the second point, and that is that most conflict is an agreement that we don't see.
Most conflict is an agreement that we don't see. Yes.
Yeah, there's a hit. Okay, so what percent of conflict, disagreement, arguments do you think might possibly be because of a misunderstanding? What's your guess? What percent?
Oh, like 80%.
Okay, now I've asked this thousands of times. 90% say 50% or more. 75% say 75% or more. About 20% say 90% or more. Justice Brandeis thought 90%. So let's just look at that. The conflicts, the arguments, the disagreements that are in fact because of a misunderstanding, what percent of those are because you misunderstand?
I'm going to say the same.
Oh, well, that's very generous. Most people are willing to say some, but a smaller number. But in the middle of an argument, what do you believe about your point of view?
That it's right.
What percent of the time?
All the time, 100%.
All the time, 100%. And when you know you're right, what do you know about them?
That they're wrong. There's only
Of course. Yes, and when you're right and they're wrong, what's your job?
To prove it to them.
Just going to be helpful. Don't want them to go down the wrong path. Now, what percent of the time when you know you're right and you know they're wrong and you try to convince them that they're wrong, what percent of the time are they grateful?
Never.
Never. But what percent of the time do we do it?
All the time.
All the time. So let this sink in. This is something we do all the time, never works, doesn't matter. We'd rather be right than feel loved. We'd rather be right than be successful. And it's an unconscious automatic hair trigger thing. So the goal is to learn how to recognize all those symptoms of stress and conflict, to be ready, because I know this person's difficult to deal with before I ever get in there. How many of you ever had an argument with someone who was not in the room?
Yes.
What are we, practicing being upset? So
I'll tell you a little story quickly. I was actually younger. I remember this one so vividly. My mom was our brownie leader. I don't know if they still do brownies, Girl Guides, that kind of thing.
Sure.
I was mad at her. So I was having arguments with her on my way home, and I was chatting away, and all of a sudden the fly, whoop, right in my mouth. Talk about karma. I learned not to talk on the way home.
Okay. So what I'm trying to help you learn how to do is have humility, which is basically a result of realizing you don't know everything. So if you're willing to admit you don't know everything, that's a little bit of a quandary, because then, oh my God, what do I think I'm right about that I might not be? And how would I know? So here's the answer. The best time to consider that maybe, perhaps, what I think is right might not be is when someone's telling me that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mind blown moment. I think people need to let that sink in.
That's the best time. And it requires you to practice some breathing, relaxing, reassuring yourself, thinking positive, looking for some humor. Those are the Speed Through Stress in 5 Steps in 15 Seconds that I'm going to give a link to for later on. But you need to be able to do that in just a moment, because the goal here is to eliminate that misunderstanding. And if I'm the one who misunderstood, isn't it in my best interest, selfish interest, to figure that out as quick as possible? Also, I think if I'm going to move the other person's mind from where it is to where I want it to be, I've got to do two things. I've got to demonstrate my openness first. And you do that by just asking a couple of questions like, what is it you want me to know? Oh, is there anything else? Is that all? Just a couple of few questions that can make a big difference for people in learning how to move through things in a quicker, faster way is all you got to have to be able to do. Those are the three things we're going to be talking about. So, what do you want me to know? Is there anything else? Is that all? And in that space, you're hearing what they're saying, and the goal here is to repeat what they're saying. Because the second thing you have to be able to do is to make sure they experience being understood. That's different than you understanding. How often do we say, I understand, and then go on to tell them what we think they're wrong about? Yeah. So I want to make sure I'm demonstrating my openness by asking those simple questions. I've got a video of a process of how you empty someone of their point of view so there's room for yours. Yeah, that's at successfulworkrelationships.com. That's just a 3-minute video. But you have to do those two things. You have to demonstrate openness first in order to have them any chance of being open. And you want to empty them of what they're saying and agree with as much as you can. And you want to create in them an experience of being understood. Because only then will they not have to be defensive. Mm-hmm. And the problem is a lot of the times the way we respond actually creates defensiveness in other people. We force them to defend their point of view because they think we didn't understand.
Yeah.
And us saying, yes, I did, doesn't make them go, oh, you're right, I don't know what got into me. So we want to help people feel understood. Even if we don't agree, you don't deal with that right away. We do it too fast. Mm-hmm. So there are these steps in the process. And when we do this, and let's say we discover there's a misunderstanding, what happens to the perception that there was a disagreement when you discover there was a misunderstanding?
Oh, it dissipates.
It goes away, and what's left is, if you take the disagreement and take off the DIS, what's left is an agreement. One that we would both agree to, no negotiation, no debate, no compromise. It was a misunderstanding. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's what you meant. I want to find out if I'm there first, because then it's the quickest way through to an agreement.
It's so funny you bring that up, because I woke up yesterday or this morning thinking about just how quickly we can move out of anger into curiosity or into like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. And, people tend to think that they don't have control over their emotions, but in an instant that can change and shift.
Well, you can help them if you understand what a person's communicating when they're angry. Mm-hmm. So I think there are two things they're communicating. They may not be aware of it. The first one is pretty obvious, that what they're saying is important to them. I like that, yeah. Okay, that's why I open up that first question. See if I can go back to that. I can tell this is important. Mm-hmm. What is it you want me to know? Because that's the first thing they're telling me when they're angry, is that it's important to them. The second thing they're telling me is they don't think I want to know. If they thought I wanted to know, they would not have to get angry to tell me. Mm. Their anger communicates their assumption I'm going to be defensive. Now, this may not be personal. They may think that about everybody. Or we may have taught them to think that about us because we basically have not ever been listening. I talk to people who have kids. Have you had any kids, Tammy?
Yeah, 2 boys.
How old are they?
20 and 24.
Okay, so when they were teenagers, did they ever tell you that you were not listening? I think that's a pretty common thing to happen.
I would say that kind of happens more with my husband than my kids.
Oh, even more so. And what's our initial reaction when they tell us that we're not listening? They go, well, yes, I am. You're the one who's not listening. So now we're arguing over here about who's listening, as opposed to just saying, oh, what am I not listening to? What is it you want me to know?
Yeah.
Help me understand this. Wow, I can tell it's important. Mm-hmm. And then you want to learn how to repeat what they're saying, just paraphrasing. But even more than that, you want to learn how to listen on 5 levels. Mm-hmm. So every communication has these 5 parts. There's some facts, there's some thoughts, emotions, meaning, expectations, what they're wanting. Most people don't know this, so they don't communicate this thoroughly. So they'll say 2 or 3 of these and not others.
Lots of opinions. And
Yeah. Yeah. So you want to listen to which lever they're speaking on and repeat that to them with no spin, no hint of what you think about it, and then ask questions about the others. So when you get to where you're saying, is that all? And they say, yes, that's all, then you can, so am I understanding? See, I want them to tell me I'm understanding. Because I want them to tell themselves. Because only then do they not have to defend it or say it again.
Yeah, that's really good.
So that's a way of dealing. Now, sometimes it may take a while. I think with my stepdaughters, it probably took about 10 years. But I think, if you're persistent and consistent, within bounds, which takes us to the next of the 3 points I wanted to make, which is the difference between a requirement and a preference.
Oh, yes.
Because I think we confuse those. We tend to put the same emotional behind just a preference. Then a requirement. A requirement, by definition, is not a preference. It's a requirement. It's not debatable. It's not negotiable. It's a deal breaker. That's what the word requirement means.
Yeah.
And you want to get to that as quick as possible if that's what the deal is, to see if that's the deal breaker. They know they're not going to agree to what you require. Well, then that ends the relationship. Okay, which means maybe you don't want to work where you're working, or maybe you don't want to be in the relationship you're in. The problem is we're not clear with ourselves, even at the beginning of a relationship, what our requirements are. We just kind of assume if they say I love you and we say I love you, that we're agreeing to the same thing.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Or, respect. Yes, everyone here respects each other. So what does that mean? I mean, look at Watson, the Texan football player. He was told that he would be involved in the decision about the coach. Now, his understanding of involved and the owner's understanding of involved, those were completely different. I think he thought he got a veto. And I think they thought you get to have input.
Yes.
Those are fundamentally different. Now, it's become like a requirement of his, but he didn't say that up front, I don't think. He may not even have known it.
Well, now let's even requirement versus preference, even at a micro level. Like, I'm thinking about someone I spoke to recently. They were angry at their spouse for the way they did dishes. Well, that's a preference. The requirement.
Well, I don't know. It could be a requirement. If you're willing to lose the relationship over it, if you're not going to get your way and you're going to end that relationship because of that, because of the way they put the toilet paper around the toilet paper roll, you can perfectly reason, you can have that. The problem is who's going to agree with you about everything that you prefer. So I think it's real important to be clear with yourself about what your requirements are, and you'll discover there are very few.
So that's interesting too, because I was thinking more requirements were the dishes need to get done. That's the requirement.
No, that's still a preference.
Okay.
But it might be the requirement. This might be, here's the contract. Like Sheldon and Big Bang. These are not preferences. This is an 85-page set of agreements, and every one of them is required. So that may be the kind of relationship you want. The problem is, I think most people, and I've done marriage counseling with thousands of people, is they do assume that because the other person now said I love you, that they thought they were agreeing to all this stuff. And then when they run into that they're not agreeing, then the only thing they can think is, well, you don't love me.
Yes.
When that person would not agree that they don't love, they do love. It's fascinating to me that this person's over here hurt and angry that person doesn't love them, and this person's hurt and angry that person doesn't love them. Well, if you didn't love them, you wouldn't be hurt and angry that they didn't love you. So the fact that they're hurt and angry is evidence of how much they love you. So, this is, there's some simple ways through all this. It's not stuff that most of us have had the opportunity to learn. I've spent, my lifetime thinking about this because I don't like pain, and I don't think I was successful in my first marriage. So I really wanted to be in my second. And I still made lots of mistakes, but it was a lot better recognizing it quicker and moving through it faster. And I think that Gold Coast video you saw was, an example. But, between the beginning of that problem and the end, there was years.
Yeah.
Of a constant conflict because I didn't know then what I know now.
And I think that's an important message, is that I mean, Oprah always says, when you know better, you do better. And so in order to fulfill that prophecy that to know better means to do better, is you need to actually put the space for you to learn and to be open and to be curious, to understand and get more context.
Right, and just again, that's if you're just willing to constantly be aware that you don't know everything, and that you care about this person, or you want to have a good relationship with them. I have a business partner I've had, been a partnership with longer than I've ever been married, and we had difficulties early on for the first 10 years, a lot of hurts and angers, until we did some, like Myers-Briggs type indicator and discs, where we learned, oh, he's like that because everybody who's like that is like that. Mm-hmm. He likes to think about something before he says it. Oh my gosh. I don't have to do that. I'll say what I'm thinking that I haven't even thought about.
It's formulating as it's coming out your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say it with such authority, and it would come across like I have really thought a lot about this and considered because that's what he would have done. Mm-hmm. And so in learning how to understand the differences, it's easier to not take it personally when those differences come up. Mm-hmm. And then you have to have some plans, like just as simple as, what does he want me to know? Is there anything else? Is that all? And so, the speedthroughstress.com is a video of about 20 minutes where I talk about when I got shot in the center of my chest, which is a pretty big graduate school lesson in life, and how I use these 5 steps to move through that. But only because I've been practicing it for about 10 years beforehand. So it became a habit. And, when I experience stress, 10 or 20 times a day, and so I'm still doing the breathe, relax, reassure yourself, think positive, look for some humor. And that helps me in many, many situations, but particularly in the challenges of conflicts in relationships. Because then I can move to the successfulrelationships.com, which has got the 3 questions, the 5 levels, 6 stages in reaching agreement, some videos and stuff. And for corporations and places where people are doing leadership development, we have something called the Professional Development Series, which is a quarterly training that runs over 3 years. And so there are 12 programs in that, 12 all-day programs. That's at pdspr.info. Mm-hmm. Because there's just so much that people need to use the workplace, not just to get the work done, but to become a more effective, powerful, supportive, successful leader and employee. And you don't want to just be here in life to, have a lot of toys and impress anybody. You want to be here also for your own personal growth, so that what you're able to do tomorrow is better than what you were able to do yesterday. And a lot of what we're talking about here is the most critical stuff to anyone's success at work or at home.
Mm-hmm. It's so fundamental. I want to go back to those 3 questions that you had shared earlier. I know this is important to you. What do you want me to know? Is there anything else? And is that all? So when you say these are 3 questions to end conflict, I think I just want to maybe add some clarity around this. We're not saying that, I know you went blue.
Yeah, my camera. I disappeared. My camera tried to focus on my green screen.
Yeah, it's all good. We're not saying that this is like the end of the conversation.
Oh, no. This is basically stage 1 in a 6-stage process, but we didn't have time to go through that.
No, so if people see this, I don't want them to think, I just have to say this and the conflict's done.
No. This begins the process. It helps you get off the stage, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So like if a leader is leading a team and a team member criticizes or disagrees with something, most leaders will take that on and try to deal with it. Where the first thing you ought to do is, tell me more about that. Is there anything else? And then you want to say, so what does the rest of the team think about this? What are the chances they're all going to agree with everything? Never. Mm-hmm. So now you're facilitating differences of opinion. And that's what you want to get good at, even in interpersonal relationships, is exploring and facilitating differences of opinion. But our own insecurities, our own lack of knowledge and skill, make us go to war too quick.
Yeah. Make
it too personal. Make it too serious because they aren't doing what we want them to do.
Yeah. And that's when you were bringing in the preference versus
requirement.
Yes.
Right. And also in thinking about these questions, you want to be repeating what they're saying and be thinking about those 5 levels. Mm-hmm. And the 3 questions, the 5 levels are our stage 1, which is, I understand you. And you're the authority on whether or not I understand you, not me. Did you understand that?
I love that you shifted that, because we do typically take ownership to understand somebody else.
Oh, of course. I understood you.
Right? I understood you because my experience was XYZ, and that's why I understand you.
It may be that I have an understanding, of course,
Yeah.
but the key is not that my understanding is correct. The key is that they experience being understood. The key is they tell me that my understanding is correct, not the other way around. Because otherwise, they're just in a defensive mode. And listen, if you're in a conflict with somebody and they think that you don't understand, then by definition, to them, nothing you say has any relevance. It would be the secret that would save their life, and it wouldn't matter because you don't know what you're talking about because you don't understand. So my first task, as soon as I can recognize there's a conflict, and I'm not as good as I like to be, but I'm better, is to eliminate that they think I don't understand. Because then we can begin to discuss. And if I misunderstood, wow, I found that out great. Well, thank you. If they're misunderstood, well, that's a little more challenging. But I'm not going to have any chance at them considering another point of view if they haven't perceived me and experienced me being open to it, and if they haven't been emptied of their ideas. So it takes a little time, but it's a lot shorter than the way we normally do it. Sometimes we don't find out the misunderstanding until years and decades later.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what you meant? Oh my gosh.
Do you find in your experience, now I don't think we actually told people that your background is psychology.
Yes.
You're a psychologist, so you have a lot of experience to draw from this question, but do you find in your experience when you're working with people that, this takes practice.
Yeah.
But by willing to step into this space where they just ask a different question, does it change the dynamic in the relationship?
Oh. From hate to love.
Yeah.
It's that profound. Because people want to feel understood. It's literally healing. It can be physically healing to have how you're feeling understood. It's one of the benefits of therapy. But it's also one of the benefits of a good hairdresser. Or a bartender.
Yeah.
We need people who are able to hear how we're feeling, to resonate, it's called. Without, and I wouldn't say without judgment, I'm not sure that's possible, but without imposing their judgment. And so the closer someone is to you, the more important they are to you, the more critical it is that you develop these skills, and any stress you experience in any relationship is evidence of your need to do it. It's not evidence of how wrong and bad they are. If there's truth to that, then you ought not be in the relationship.
That's interesting. That's been my experience too, so I wanted to ask you, because you have a lot more experience with working with this area, but I had seen the same in my own marriage and in the people that I help as well.
Me too.
Yeah. So what I often recommend to people, and I'm not sure if this is something you do, is when they're going to try something new, is to write it down and just kind of preface the situation and say, okay, I want to try something different. We always end up doing the same thing. If you'll just kind of sit with me for a second and just read it if they have to, just to get into the process and the practice.
I think it's real important to capture your thoughts, however you do it, on paper, in a computer, or whatever. Because tell me what you were upset about last Tuesday. And I think all these stresses that are our unlearned lessons, I think they're repeating. They're repeating in our lives. And if you can keep a journal of it, just how you're feeling, just focus on that. Don't do like what I had for breakfast, but what upset me. And then look back at it for those repeating patterns, because, this is this issue I don't know how to deal with. It always involves that person. And we tend to think that, our problems in any relationship is because of the way the other person behaves.
Yeah.
We tend not to think that we had anything to do with it. I had a client in counseling once, and she was married 8 times. It was kind of like a hobby. And her complaint was they were all the same.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, what's the common denominator here?
At some point you got to look.
Yeah, she was just real convinced that's the way men are, and I was going, well, the ones you've chosen, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that, the other 6 billion of us are like that. But, you have to be willing to accept that you have a lot of ideas that you believe are true that are not. And they're going to cause you pain. And the problem is we use the intensity of our emotion, the intensity of our pain, as evidence of the righteousness of our thinking. The more upset I am, the more right I am, and you'd better know it. When I believe exactly the opposite. The more upset I am, the more off something I'm thinking is.
Wow, that's a paradigm shift right there.
Right, and it is the doorway to enlightenment and to a freer life and to a greater sense of kindness and empathy and love in every relationship. Because what are the chances that you're going to have a conflict with somebody eventually? 100%. So get ready to deal with it in the way you would like someone to deal with you, which is basically you want them to understand you. Well, do it first.
I love it. What a great summary of our little section here. So you're going to offer a free resource to our listeners.
Bunches of them.
I know you've dropped a few things today, which is great. See through stress in 5 steps in 15 seconds. Why don't you talk? I know you briefly talked about it earlier, but just tell us quickly about that again.
Well, that's based on what I think we're doing automatically, what I call the automatic stress reaction. Is tend to hold our breath, tense our muscles, have self-doubt, think negative, get serious. And we do it every time anything isn't the way we want it to be, including ourselves. And we're really good at it, and we're never going to not do it. The goal is to learn how to recognize it quicker, move through it faster, to its opposite. Breathe deeper, relax completely, reassure yourself, thinking that you can, even if you don't know how. Thinking positive, projecting that positive into the unknown, and looking for some smiles, causing yourself to feel good for no reason. Those are what those 5 steps are about. And like I said, there's a 20-minute video. This is all free. And a workbook. Originally, I thought 5 steps, 5 pages. Well, it ended up being 50 pages because I wrote a lot of stories, and then I have worksheets and activities. So to develop the habit of each one so that you can get to where you can do it in 15 seconds.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. That's such a supportive device, too. I mean, recognizing that is our stress response and that's our go-to all the time, and being able to shift it is much like how we just said earlier about when people show up differently, it changes the dynamics. And you were saying it can be healing, it's love versus hate kind of thing. This is kind of the same idea for self.
Yeah. The Course in Miracles talks about the presence of a healing mind. So the goal is to experience peace without needing anything or anyone to be different than they are, including yourself. I can have lots of preferences, but the goal is not needing in order to feel okay about me with my lessons learned and lessons unlearned, with my successes and failures, and with the challenges I have in my life. And that's not a natural state, I think. I think that's a state we have to learn how to develop. And I think life is a school, a mystery school. You don't know what your lessons are. That's the mystery. But your stress is evidence of an unlearned lesson. And the more you can be curious about that and take responsibility for it, the quicker you can have the emotion you want, no matter the circumstance, no matter the situation. And today on Facebook, there was this wonderful thing. I just saw, I'm going to pull this up right now because I think it's just so great. It says, you know you have mastered a soul lesson when the circumstance has not changed, but the way you respond has.
Oh, wow.
This is true energy of self-mastery.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah, perfect.
So go do it.
Right. You heard it here first, folks. You didn't know what you were signing up for today because you said life is a mystery. You never know what you're going to get today.
Yeah.
For this lesson.
Yeah. So speedthroughstress.com. That's for that. And the other one is successfulworkingrelationships.com. And both of them have free videos and workbooks and worksheets and things to practice. And if you want more and want to work with me, I do coaching and training and work with individuals and work with groups, and those links will take you to other information about how to do all that.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much for spending your time
Oh,
with me.
no, Tammy, it's been wonderful. It's been a blessing. I'm so grateful to support your own path and making a difference in the world, because obviously the need is profound, and we all need help along the way, and the best ones are those who are a little bit down the path, which you've been.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And that's an official wrap on this session of the Dissolve Workplace Conflict Summit Speaker Series. Now be sure to connect with your favorite speakers by clicking on the link below and taking advantage of the free resources that they are sharing with you so that you can dissolve your conflict without damaging your relationships. Now be sure to head on over into the Facebook group Dissolving Workplace Conflict and give us your favorite takeaways from today's session using the hashtag Dissolve Workplace Conflict. I can't wait to see what you've learned.